Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Duck the IRS podcast. I'm your host, Parham Khorsandi, managing attorney of Victory Tax Lawyers. Have my main man, my partner, Amir Boroumand, on deck.
What's up, everybody? I'm back.
Amir's back. So me and Amir have been partners and working together since 2011. Started Victory Tax Lawyers together. And just been good friends, good partners.
Yeah.
Had a great relationship together for a while now.
We're on the same page.
Absolutely.
What are we talking about today?
We are going to talk today about notices.
Okay.
IRS notices. And they can be scary.
People's favorite.
Yeah. And a lot of people are scared of the notices.
They don't open them. They shove them in the drawer.
It's
they go
true.
in a secret drawer with never opened. Some clients come with bags of letters. You could need all these. I'm like, you didn't even open these.
I've heard if you stick the IRS notices in a place that you don't see, the problem just goes away. Yeah, the problem just go away.
Unfortunately, that's not the case.
No, it doesn't.
It makes
work like
things
that.
worse, actually, long run.
So, Amir, so really, we've had clients before that have come to us and have literally given us a bag of notices, unopened.
Yeah.
And they're like, here, we don't know what to do with this. So notices can be scary from the IRS, you know, and they're not easy to read either.
They're not easy to read. Like you said, they could be scary. Sometimes they open the notices and they'll write a letter back to the address on the notice, and they'll never get a response, and they don't follow up. And then all of a sudden they get a bank levy or a wage garnishment.
Right.
They're like, "What? I responded. I sent a letter." And IRS is not reading the letters,
Yeah.
or the letter you're sending is just not speaking their language.
Absolutely. And so when you guys get these notices, if number one, you have to open the mail. That's
would
like
help.
a general rule.
That helps.
Open the mail. But number two, you have to really know how to read these notices. It's not like it's in plain language. It's 4 or 5 pages. Sometimes there's some math calculations on interest and penalty. And you don't really know how to differentiate between these notices. They all can sound the same, and they can all mean, or you think they mean, that you're going to get levied right away. So it's hard to differentiate.
And you get different ones for every tax year you owe for.
Yeah.
So if you're not somebody who just has one tax year of debt, you're getting letters for 2020, 2021, 2022, and they can all be in different phases of the quote-unquote collection process. So it's sometimes people are like, I really don't know how much I owe. I can't tell.
Yeah, because you would have to like add up all of the notices.
You have to add
no
it
one's
up.
going to do that.
Some of the notices cross in the mail. Sometimes they've made some kind of a small payment, or in a lot of cases, the clients assume they're on a payment plan,
Yeah.
but they're not. They're like, no, I've been making the payment every month, but that doesn't mean that you're on a payment plan. So
Yeah, that's a good point. Our clients say like, hey, if I just send $500 to the IRS, will they stop sending me notices? It's like, no, it doesn't work like that.
or will it look good?
Yeah, they're not going to care.
No.
So really the indicators for the IRS and why these notices get sent out is really based on, are you in collections or do you have a formal agreement in place? If you have a formal agreement, you know, they don't send a lot of notices, maybe once a year, an annual notice or something like that.
You'll get the annual reminder of your balance. Sometimes you'll get a letter that's not necessarily an annual balance due reminder, but it says in the fine print, like if you're on a payment plan, just keep doing
You're
it.
right.
But that sometimes throws people off. So I think the main thing to know about notices, which I'm sure you're about to share, is which notice is the most important.
Yeah, absolutely. And these notices come out when you're in collections, and there's a series of notices that will come out. And most of these notices that you'll get while you're in collections and you owe money to the IRS will be CP something. You know, CP 14, CP this, CP that. And CP just stands for computer process, meaning the computer's just spitting these out.
Yeah.
Amir, is there someone at the IRS that is like, oh yes, Mr. Jacobs, let's send him a notice, and is sending him notices?
No, it's all computer generated, like you said, and the reason the computer is generating these notices is because they need to send out the notices in order to actually be able to come after people to
absolutely.
collect. So the computer just kind of automatically is spitting out these notices, and it seems at least there's no set time frame.
Yeah.
So it's not like every 30
it's
days
true.
a notice is going to go. It's random. I'm not sure how the computer decides who to send notices to. That's still a mystery.
Yeah, I think it's a mystery to the IRS too.
I don't think
there's an algorithm.
Yeah.
And me and Amir are really good at understanding IRS process, procedure, navigating around it. I mean, we've mastered that. But I
Trying
think
to figure out
the
their
one
patterns.
thing, yeah. But the one thing that we can't figure out on the pattern is that when these notices are supposed to go out and how they go out and who gets them and who doesn't. For example, I'll have a client that owes over $1 million, and for 2 years he won't get any notices.
Yeah.
And then I have another client, he owes like 20,000 and he's getting notices every 30 days. So it should probably, the people that owe more should probably take priority, and that's not happening.
Same with revenue officers.
Yeah.
I mean, they've been assigning cases to revenue officers for clients that have minimal tax balances, and people who owe $1 million have nobody to work with.
Yeah, that's true.
And so that's also something that's different about notices is they're notices that come from automated collection systems, which is ACS. Those are the most generated letters.
Yeah.
And then eventually, if you get assigned to a revenue officer, they send you a notice or a letter. But the difference is that their name and their direct line is there. It's not an 800 number.
Yeah,
So-
that's a great point. That's a great point because, getting the notices in the mail, something that everybody should understand after opening the mail and taking a look is who is sending you this notice from the IRS. Most of the time, the general population, probably 75% of people out there, you're going to get notices strictly from automated collections, which Amir referenced to. It's the 1-800 number. They're responsible for a majority of the tax debt cases. It's not a specific agent assigned. You call the 1-800 number, you're going to
Get
get a
someone
different
different
person.
every time, which is good in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and it works to our benefit. But then the other 25% can be with revenue officers, like you said.
Yeah, and their letters are more aggressive usually.
Yeah.
They're trying to set up an appointment. They're demanding information.
And more tailored to the taxpayer, right? They're not as generic.
Correct.
They'll be a little bit more specific in what they need.
Typically, they have their contact information on the top right-hand corner of the page. It'll say revenue officer
Of the title, right?
or revenue agent if you're getting audited, and their title, and they have an address that is not a PO box.
Yeah.
Usually. So those letters you absolutely want to open because they typically come with some kind of a deadline, and that's when I don't want to say in danger, but
You're in the hot seat.
stakes are a little bit higher when you're getting that kind of a letter. Whereas with ACS, the majority of the notices are probably not an emergency.
Right. Oh, correct. And that's a good way of putting it. So these ACS notices are CP, like we said, computer processed. But the notices you get from revenue officers, there actually is somebody sitting behind a keyboard generating those notices. So you really have to be careful on the notices. Is it CP notice from ACS or is it an actual letter generated by a revenue officer? You have to make that differentiation.
And also, like, what CP notice are we really looking for? Or do we care which CP notice they have in hand? Maybe the CP notice before what, the LT11 or the 1058, which is typically a final balance due reminder. That's when we get the call. I have to pay. This is the final notice. No, it's not.
Yeah, we have rights after that. So let's go through a few of these notices,
Okay.
Amir, if you're down.
Let's do it.
So let's say you file a return and you don't pay the balance due. You'll typically get either a CP14 or a CP22 notice. That's usually the first one. And it's actually not an aggressive notice.
No.
It's just like, hey, looks
Here's
like
the
you
bill.
forgot to pay us. It just maybe slipped your mind that you owe us $40,000.
Check lost in the mail.
Yeah, exactly. So, that notice is just like a friendly reminder that you have a balance due. And people are not too afraid of that. They know they owe the IRS initially.
Yeah.
It's the notices that come after that could start to be a little bit scary.
Well, they send that second one. This is a
Yeah,
second balance due reminder.
Exactly.
And then
Yeah.
after that, it starts to get, we're going to notice of intent to seize or offset your state refund.
Yeah.
And they're going to try to take a refund if you have one with the state, which Usually, if you owe the IRS, you're not banking on a huge refund from the state, but
Correct.
they send that letter and then they start getting into we're going to levy you.
Certified mail, yeah.
Yeah.
So up to this point, you've gotten a couple balance due reminder notices, a notice of intent to offset any state refund, maybe a duplicate notice here and there. Then the certified mail notices get started. That's when it starts to get a little bit serious. That's when you guys really have to put the alerts on that you should do something. And then ultimately, after a couple of these certified mail notices, namely one being a final notice, after that final notice is when the IRS can start garnishing and getting after your bank accounts.
So they'll send out that final notice of intent to levy. They'll give you 30 days to file an appeal to exercise your collection due process rights. If you miss that 30-day window, they're not going to hit a button and levy you the next day. But at that point, your account is now eligible to be garnished or seized or whatever. They can now come after you for that tax year's balance owed, which is why it's so important not to shove the envelopes into the drawer because, yes, they can't collect against you until they send that final notice, but you want to kind of plan and anticipate when that might come because, yes, you can exercise your appeal rights and it's absolutely encouraged if it's necessary. But when you do exercise your appeal rights, the flip side of it is it extends the CSED, which that can be a conversation for another time. That's its own podcast. But
when do balances expire?
When do balances expire for sure? So the CSED is the collection statute expiration date. IRS has 10 years to collect the tax, but filing an appeal to a final notice will extend that date. So it's important to reach out to somebody who knows what they're doing, preferably us. But if not, somebody who can help you navigate these notices and properly work your case.
Yeah, absolutely. And so Amir brings up a really good point about these final notices and what action you can take. Because up to a certain point, you can't ignore the notices. Nothing's going to happen.
Yeah.
But it's very quickly and easily, it can flip to the other side where you're open to levy after this final notice has been sent. So you guys have to be on the lookout for these notices. Don't stick them in the drawer, open them up. And what we've seen this year, which I don't think we've seen in a very long time, the IRS rarely changes their procedure in this. This year alone, and we're in August of 2024, we've seen the IRS send out 2 brand new type of notices. And they do this once every 5 years. And now they're for the second time this year, they sent out 2 new notices that they've never sent before. Earlier around February, March, they sent the LT38s. And then they just recently sent new ones, no, Amir?
Yeah, it's a little confusing because they're basically sending you a letter letting you know what your balance is and what the monthly payment could be. But they do it by year.
Yeah.
So if you owe for 2019, they're going to send you a letter with a monthly payment for that year. And then they're going to send you a letter for 2021, for example, with another monthly payment. Yeah. That's not how it works. They set one monthly payment for everything. So you would essentially have to add up all these monthly payments that they're offering you for each tax year to come up with an actual monthly amount that you would have to pay.
But the notices don't read like that.
No, it's very misleading.
So
it's like, I only have to pay $253. Well, that's only for this tax year that you owe $5,000 for. This other one, you have to pay $700. So it's a little bit confusing, but that was the first time that I've seen that letter. And then obviously the please act on your balance.
Yeah.
I feel like they took a big break. I mean, for the longest time, they weren't issuing notices.
Yeah, since COVID, in March of 2020.
So really. March 2020 to what? Beginning of this year, really?
March of 2020, for 4 years.
Sporadic notices and revenue officer contact. But outside of that, very little notice letters going out. And I think what they're doing is they're trying to ease people into it so that they appear like understanding and caring for the taxpayer. But this is all kind of a setup for what's to come when they eventually open up the floodgates and start collecting. Because everybody's like, since 2020, I haven't really heard much. I don't want to wake up the sleeping giant. It's like, they're there.
Yeah.
This is intentional. And they're at some point going to begin really getting aggressive. And I think these are the baby steps leading up to
Yeah.
what's going to be.
So the old IRS would just drop the hammer. The new IRS seems to be easing everybody into the idea of, hey, you owe this money. We haven't been that aggressive, but we are starting to turn up the burners. And when we call ACS and speak to revenue officers and the collection division of the IRS, they keep telling us, it's coming. Like,
coming.
Be on the lookout. It's coming. And so with that, I think they are really turning up the number of notices that we're getting, so far as even creating 2 new notices, like we just said. And so I think IRS right now is been on a small delay, and right now they're really trying to push a lot of this
They're
paperwork.
gearing up. I mean, it's the notice. One of the notices says, "Please act on your balance."
Yeah.
Like, it's not. It can't be
So this
any
is the
more
LT38?
clear. Yeah, please act on your balance. They're asking you to do something about it, so that when you don't, we said, please, you didn't do it, so now we're going to empty out your bank account, or we're going to take money out of your paycheck, or whatever it might be. And yes, it's stressful getting those letters. I'm never going to be able to pay this back, and that's fine if you can't pay it back, and they will have to accept that that's the case if you can prove it.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people are discouraged by the letters, by the amount of the debt, but ultimately it's like any other debt, right? It's like having a mortgage or a credit card debt. Obviously, it's not an asset, and it's a little bit scarier who's coming after you,
Right.
because they can do more to you. But take care of it. There's so many people who are paying huge credit card bills or trying to consolidate credit card debt, and they're so scared, obviously, because they don't want to hurt their credit. But the credit card companies, they can call you, they can harass you, and they can, report your payments late, but they can't garnish your wages.
Yeah, until they file a lawsuit.
Until they file a lawsuit.
IRS doesn't need to do that.
IRS doesn't need to do that. IRS can garnish your wages. They can levy your bank account. They can, try to facilitate some kind of a foreclosure on your home. It's rare,
Yeah.
but I guess my point is the IRS is the bigger person here,
Yeah.
right? They're the more scary person, but people tend to pay the credit card bill.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of the reason that is because they need the available credit to continue to utilize, but it's very important to treat the IRS the same way you would do a creditor and respond.
Yeah.
If you respond, you have a really good chance of being in a position where you're not going to be at the gas station trying to pump gas, or at the grocery store getting groceries, or right before a holiday, they empty your account. Happens so many times.
We see that often.
Yeah, it's sad, but it's all because of a delay, So
Yeah. So I think probably for our viewers, a good way to understand the notices is, don't think of it as the IRS coming after you and they're sending these notices to intimidate you. It can be intimidating, but at the end of it, I think these notices, the way that our taxpayers have to view it, is they're giving you an opportunity to call them and to do something on the balance. So,
and there are options.
And there are, absolutely. One option that you guys should not partake in is ignoring it. So definitely don't ignore it. But reaching out yourselves, reaching out to a law firm like ours, reaching out to somebody that knows what they're doing, potentially your CPA, reaching out to somebody that knows the IRS and can respond to these notices, whether it's yourself or a professional, that is the best advice that we could give on these notices. Just don't ignore them. Reach out to the IRS or hire someone to reach out to the IRS, because there is always a solution. There's a way we can work with the IRS. There's a way to save money and to make sure we can prevent any of these bad things from happening. But the number one thing is open your mail, respond to the notices, and get help.
Yeah, and get help. And think about it. I mean, they make the notices aggressive, and so many people ignore it.
Yeah.
Imagine if it wasn't aggressive, nobody would ever call, and be like,
No thanks.
no, I'll get back to you when I can.
That's true. Okay, great. Guys, that's what we have for the notices. Main thing, open them, respond to them. They can be intimidating, but they're giving you an opportunity to call and sanctify this and rectify this.
Most places offer advice too, free.
Yeah, that's true. A lot of places offer free advice. I know on our website, if you enter the notice, it'll explain what it looks like.
Yeah.
VictoryTaxLaw.com. If anybody gets a notice, you could go on our firm's website and check it out, and then it'll explain what's going on. But respond to the notices, and if anybody needs help, they can always reach out. Amir, thank you for joining us.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here.
And
I'll be back.
We'll see everybody soon. Duck the IRS podcast. We'll have another episode coming out soon. Thank you.
Thanks.